So very good afternoon to all of you. The topic, as was mentioned, is very exciting and very pertinent to the conference, which is next generation startups, incubators and accelerators. So since Mr. J. Chowdary has already been introduced, may I request him to deliver his keynote points, but little brief, So as he was mentioning, we are a little short of time. We have 45 minutes and we have 11 people on the panel. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Sudan. 45 minutes and so many panelists. So I'll try to give a nano keynote, just a few pointers. So next generation incubators, accelerators, and how we create the new entrepreneurs in this disruptive era. So that is the hallmark, what we need to do, how we can really catch up to that new wave which is happening all over the globe. How India can catch up or even beat those ecosystems in the world, particularly in Silicon Valley and Europe and all that. I think it's a great opportunity for India to catch up, like what we did in the telecom industry, when everybody was still trying to lay the copper wires and all that. We straight away went into the wireless mobiles and all that. Today, India has got the best telecom infrastructure. In fact, the kind of bandwidth that we provide in every nook and corner of this country, I don't think any country anywhere in the world can have that kind of infrastructure. The kind of digital payment mechanism, the infrastructure through Aadhaar and the India Stack and all that, that also India is #1 at this point of time in the world. So the new age entrepreneurs in India, they have to catch up and take advantage of the infrastructure already created by central government and also various state governments. And many innovative incubators like T-Hub in Hyderabad have already been functional very well. But only thing is, if you go in the conventional way in this disruptive era, they'll get disrupted. You have to think in a very innovative way. How do we really think out of the box? People keep talking about these buzzwords, but I just now met one gentleman. He's from Gujarat, and he met me on a lunch meeting. He is actually manufacturing all the coffee and tea vending machines, and with our own indigenous technology. Like whenever I come to Delhi, whenever I ask filter coffee, South Indian filter coffee, none of the hotels are able to match my taste. So I stopped taking filter coffee whenever I come to North India. Whereas this gentleman said, sir, perfect filter coffee vending machine. We already have the machines, and these machines are getting deployed, not only coffee, tea vending machines and all that. And he's going to export these machines, and he's a very young gentleman coming from Gujarat, getting into the manufacturing. So that is the kind of talent now we are seeing in India. As somebody was telling in the morning that this is the India wave. I think in this wave, what is required is mentoring. Recently, for example, when my friend Randeep Sudan called me from Singapore, Jay, when I have this product company and I need your help. I asked him to come over to Hyderabad, and today he is very happy that we are able to get him funding, and we are also finding out the opportunities, how we can monetize whatever the products and IP that he has created. Because India itself is a very big market. So that's where one has to help each other, networking. Today, whatever Chinmay has done in this conference, all who's and who's they have come here. So when you come here, you have to network, find out who are your potential customers, how using them you can connect to the world and all that. See, market access is the key thing. Technology, there are dozen technologies are there. So many products are coming with ChatGPT kind of generative AI tools. Creating new products is very easy. But how do you get monetized? How do you get the new customers? That's where you have to create the entry barriers. So fortunately, India is in a very big opportunity today. Consumer is on the rise, and India itself can give enough business for any, either it's a technology startup or manufacturing startups or pharmaceutical startup or food related startup. There is so much opportunities India itself can provide. When I was studying in IIT Madras, and everybody, all my classmates left for United States. And when I asked them why you are going, no, India is not the land of opportunities. US is the land of opportunities. So we want to pursue those opportunities. That's why all of them went. Today, many of them are coming back because India is the land of opportunities. All the Fortune 1000 companies, they're all coming here. All the startup companies across the globe, they're looking towards India because India is the biggest market. So with this nano keynote, I don't want to extend because time is very short. So probably I'll go with Randeep. Randeep, go ahead.
Thank you very much for those very interesting perspectives. I realize that two of the panelists here have to go. They have a hard stop. So what I'll do is that I'll bring them up first, and I'll request them to just give their perspectives on the broad topic that we have for this panel. So let me start with Ms. Shivaarti Bajaj and then go to Mr. Amit Dubey. So over to you, Shivaarti.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here on such a esteemed panel, and thank you for organizing such a great event, sir. I'll keep it short because I understand that we are running against time for this panel. What we're discussing here is incubators and accelerators, and I'll limit myself to commenting on the legal and business aspects of that in terms of funding and growth. Incubators and accelerators in India have come at a stage. I mean, we have from the likes of T-Hub and Mr. Chowdary also sitting here. It is for the very first time in the history of the evolution of incubators and accelerators from India that we have now diversified from only a government ecosystem to also a very heavy private ecosystem. Earlier, most of the incubators and accelerators were backed by the government. Now we have private parties coming to play in terms of not only academic institutions but also HNIs and other funds, the larger funds who are opening their early stage incubators, which is actually a very big, it's a very big move for the Indian startup ecosystem, because incubators and accelerators are something that have traditionally been backed only by the government or academic institutions. But however, with the private sector coming into being, sets up the whole chain for their growth in a very quicker fashion. And in terms of legalities, obviously it is the incorporation of the incubators and accelerators that need to be kept in mind, the kind of structuring that needs to be there, because they need legal advice of a very sharp level, and because we do handle a lot of incubators and accelerators, and we understand that sometimes they tend to ignore this very important aspect, but in the longer run it plays a very important role. So which are few pointers, whether it's mostly a LLP structure or private limited structure, depending on how they want to grow going forward. And just to add to this and to conclude, I'd just like to bring forth this data that compared to the US, there are 23 incubators and accelerators in India per 1,000. And in the US, there are 14. So we are all in all number 2 globally in terms of the number of incubators, accelerators in India, which I think is a great feat, and it directly fuels to our ecosystem of growth and developing as a country and fueling our innovation as well. Thank you.
Hello. Shall I?
Please.
First of all, thank you so much, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of such a diligent audience, and what a panel they have curated. So friends, I am a cybercrime investigator, and whatever I have learned in my life, I have learned through criminals. And I truly believe criminals are innovators. They always teach us something new whenever we solve a case, and either they teach us a new modus operandi and new process vulnerability. They are innovating, and they are very fast innovating. So I'll just share some of these aspects, that how do I see the next generation startups would look like. First of all, we all know before 2009, we never realized the value of our data. When WhatsApp was formed in 2009 and it was acquired in 2013, within 3.5 years, it was valued $19.3 billion. It was first of its kind acquisition. Nobody thought that two youngsters, they will just start a mobile app which is just enabling people to chat. offering it free, not charging anything, and they'll be valued $19.3 billion. It's such a huge amount. If you compare it with any other conglomerate in India, maybe Anand Mahindra and all, they may not be having that wealth even if they are running 75 plus odd companies. Try to understand the value of the data that we have missed out in last decade. Now this decade, it is very, very important. Second, AI. And not only me, if we all know that the next 5 years will be very crucial for any country around the world. If they'll miss out this opportunity, they'll miss out in every aspect. In India itself, we are predicting close to $1 trillion GDP through AI. And so quantum computing. Government of India has recently announced $1 billion for quantum research. And we hardly see experts or startups or people innovating here. And criminals have already started innovating. We are already facing some quantum attacks and disrupting RSA 204 built encryptions or threats to banking sector. Why not? So these are the three key pillars that I'll see how India is shaping us in future with startups, and I expect lots of startups. And earlier it used to take 30 years, 20 years to become a unicorn. Then we thought we have seen a company becoming unicorn within a year. And I think during Pokemon Go, we have seen a company becoming a unicorn in a week. And now I'm predicting very soon we'll have examples where morning company will be founded, and by evening you will see it has become a unicorn because of the value that they'll give it to you. So thank you so much. I see startups to innovate in AI, quantum, and probably in metaverse to disrupt this world. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Now this session, we'll try to organize it around 3 topics. So one topic is, how will the next generation of incubators and accelerators be different from today? So already, of course, some points have already been made, but may I request the CEO for T-Hub, Mr. Srinivas Rao Mahankali, to give his perspectives on how he sees this particular paradigm to change. Over to you.
So thank you, Mr. Sudan, and first of all, thank you to Chinmay and his team for having me here. So I think this may sound a little paradoxical, but what I'm going to start with is, and I want to make sure everyone is awake, right? So first, I think this whole model of his physical incubation, right, I think will change, right? So I think you'll see a lot. I think we've all learned during the pandemic on how to cope with, doing things digitally, right? So I think you'll start to see more and more focus on virtual incubation, right? And obviously that has tremendous advantages because geography is no longer, a limitation. And today, for example, like Dr. Chowdary was saying, for example, mentors could be anywhere in the globe, right? You could get funded from anywhere in the globe. You could find customers anywhere in the globe, right? So I think virtual incubation will start to become more and more critical, one. Second, I think, is new models, right? So I think one of the things in India today is we have 700 plus incubators. And like she said, many of them are government supported, academic supported. You will see more private sector incubators coming up. Also, I think the existing challenge for many of the incubators is if the source of funding, which for example, today is predominantly government funding, for example, dries up, because many of these entities are set up as Section 8 not-for-profit type of entities. I think they'll have to start figuring out different models for monetization, right? So meaning you may have, some of them may have to start thinking about creating for-profit models, because it's a question of sustainability, right? So where, for example, you take equity in the startups in return for services rendered and figure out how to monetize that. So literally you have some skin in the game, in a manner of speaking. So virtual incubation, different financing and funding models. Third, what we've seen today in India is, as I said, 700 plus incubators, but we haven't seen one model which is becoming more and more, attractive from an outcome perspective, which is around venture studios, right? So we haven't seen too much of that happening in India. The difference is in an incubator, there's a startup already identified, and then you figure out how to scale. I'll give you some examples, right? So we have all our large academic institutes, the IITs and so on, have tons of patents which are created, right? So For example, IIT Madras, each year 500 plus patents come out from research done by academicians, then PhD students, MTech students, and so on, and many of them just remain on the shelf, right? So you think about a model where you figure out how to monetize those patents because they solve some problems. So identify someone, for example, if it's something to do with life sciences, someone with 15 years experience who wants to become an entrepreneur, right? And there's something which has been built, a patent, which you can potentially commercialize, monetize, etc., right? So that's what venture studios broadly will do. So I think you'll start to see more. And world over, it has been proven that the venture studio model tends to give better outcomes from a survival rate, from a funding rate, etc., avoiding mortality, blah, blah, than a typical incubation thing, right? So funding models, venture studios, virtual incubation, and last point before you cut me off, I think is you'll also start to see sectoral specialization, right? Today, while there are specific incubators, for example, in life sciences and so on, particularly in some areas of deep tech, right? I think you'll start to see sectoral incubators. And one last point, with your permission, I think collaboration between incubators within India, as well as international collaborations, for example, for the purposes of market access, is going to become more and more important.
Thank you very much.
Randeep, I just want to add, whatever MSR said about the digital incubation, ISF actually is going to launch maybe in the month of August or September, along with Gamictronics, one of the #1 metaverse company in India. Initially, we are going to create a ISF Expo on the digital space. All the buying, selling, everything can happen in that metaverse environment. And also the pitching, startups can pitch on a daily basis. Not necessarily they have to come for every quarter pitching session and all that. Every day there'll be digital jury will be there, and they can come and pitch, and who are also selected, and they'll go for the funding. All those things are going to happen in the digital space. We are going to launch probably in the month of August. So ISF and Metaverse will be launched soon.
So I think Shivaarti and Amit have to leave. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. No problem. So that was an interesting perspective on the future of incubation acceleration. I personally think that a lot of countries, including India, are planning to go for central bank digital currencies. And it was mentioned about financing of these startups. I think the world will completely change once CBDCs are there, because you can trace what is the spend which a startup is doing or which a company is doing end to end. If you can do that, then the opportunities which are business opportunities become very evident, and the whole paradigm might shift in terms of financing, but that's a little time away, certainly. Now let's move to Mr. Seshadri Vangala to hear his perspectives on the topic, please.
Thank you. And first of all, it's great to be in the panel with my mentors. I think, I used to normally hear, and now in the panel. I always go with my tagline slogan, networking is better than not working. So one thing I see is I've been in multiple countries, and I run a day-to-day, I run a global workforce solutions firm, but again, with JSR and me, in the founding for the ISF, which was India Startup Festival, now it is truly International Startup Festival. The intent, before I go there, the reason for when I want to go with a small anecdote, when I've been to a couple of universities in India, especially at the rural part, we're talking all of startups, incubation, accelerations. After all that kind of people were talking and all that, most of them did ask me, "But sir, ye incubation acceleration mane kya hai? What does this mean?" I think in the rural, especially looking at the population, mostly in the rural segment, which still constitutes, I believe, 80%, sir. Only 20% know what it means, and I don't think it's this big. So I believe even across the globe, even being to Station F and all that, across the globe. So first, I think we need to identify how do we do some outreach campaigns to say what really this means and how they can really be benefited. And obviously, the mentors are not always available. We need really mentors. So I think this what with ISF, as Jason mentioned, one is Metaverse, We're also trying to identify some of the initiatives where we can outreach. That's where we are working more on the rural segment. I think we had 125 term sheets. I think JS didn't mention in one single day in ISF. I think you should applaud for the one single day. We have 125 term sheets, especially rural startups in our ISF second edition of our festive. We are touching that more. And that's really happening. We have a mentorship program. Everybody who is there, irrespective of what background, everything they carry in, they can come in. They can pitch in those sessions and kind of have all the global mentors as well as the investors in one line. I mean, that's the first of its kind program that we already there. So I always feel that it's more on the softer lines. How do we outreach? How do we bridge the gap? I'm being a talent guy, obviously talking in the context of talent. I believe we still have India, while we talk about all the great stories, which is great. The world is looking to us, yes. But at the same time, there's a rural population, though it can't be a short-term gains for us. Everyone has to look into those rural population to train them, teach them. It can be long-standing to have certain programs. Maybe that's where we have good talent for startups and also doing our own products, sir. That's it from me.
No, thank you. Very interestingly, there is this MacArthur Foundation, and they hold a challenge every year, which is the $100 million challenge. So they are looking for ideas where they can finance and invest $100 million on a challenge. So there's a huge data set which is available on what people have proposed. And quite a few of them are to the point which Mr. Seshadri was mentioning, rural areas and development-oriented challenges, which is obviously a huge opportunity. So point well taken. Now let's turn to Mr. Vignesh Mohan and see what his perspective, especially coming from IIT Jodhpur.
Not just coming from IIT Jodhpur, I was previously associated with Government of Tamil Nadu in formulating their startup policy for the state, right? Formulating the startup nodal agency at Tamil Nadu. So I've been looking at the incubation centers from a very early stage, around 2016 times, right? And possibly while making the policies, we were traditional businesses basically man, money and infrastructure put together, right? And then the difference with a startup is it also comes with an idea which is highly scalable and venture fundable, right? So the basic idea of creating yesterday's incubation centers were that a startup will approach them with a good team and a great idea. So the incubation center will help them with money and infrastructure, right? So government schemes were most oriented towards funding the incubation centers and also helping them to fund their incubated startups, right? And also the components of funding included two things. One is a recurring and a non-recurring cost. Recurring basically is the operational expenses and the manpower, salaries and other stuff. Non-recurring will be to create the infrastructure which is required. Individual incubators play to their strengths. Someone creates a lab along with a co-working space. Someone just creates a co-working space and a design studio. And so on and so forth. That's yesterday's incubation schemes were mostly oriented towards that. And the challenges which we faced were, one was that we did not get the right people to join these incubation centers as CEOs, managers, etc., etc. Even though there were salaries provided by the government to the tune of certain lakhs, still there was no incentive alignment for the best of the key people who have made it big in the startup ecosystem to come and join an incubation center as a CEO and lead that, right? Basically, that was one of the problems which we faced. And the second problem was that we were only solving for infrastructure and money, and that was limited, right? You can't keep giving money from the government side to this place. The private money was not coming that much in. The private universities were not incentivized that much to start an incubation center and funded by themselves, right? So coming to this date, after a few years, I think four years after, we are looking at a lot of money being sorted now, right now, right? Most of the private incubators or private universities are actually funding the incubators. A lot of private incubators have come up. And the manpower is also sorted to a great extent because a lot of successful founders, after their exits, they want to come and associate themselves with an accelerator or an incubator as a mentor or as a CEO, or they want to start their own fund or a acceleration program. So that is also sorted to a particular extent. And also we are now looking at, because of COVID especially, the infrastructure is kind of faded off. And more importance is given on initial funding part of the venture, and then shared infrastructure. So sir just spoke about the virtual incubation, but right now what is happening is that most of the startups are associated with at least 3 or 4 incubation centers through different schemes. They get Prayas from one of the centers, they get Startup India seed support from one of the centers, they are physically incubated at another center because they have the infrastructure expertise with them. We are seeing this sort of a good collaborative co-incubation happening within a lot of centers. That's today's date. Tomorrow's date is what another thing which beautifully mentioned by Mr. Srinivas sir about venture studios. We were only solving for money and infrastructure. Now the venture studios also brings the idea with them. Right? They say we have the idea, we have the money, we have the infrastructure. Let's find and put together a team so that there is a venture which will be successful. Right? They'll fund that, they'll give the idea, they'll fund it, and they'll also give the infrastructure to develop whatever necessary things. And that's a new thing which is coming up. And also I look at more private participation in tomorrow's world. Already there are CSR money which is being looked upon to be given to the incubation centers. Apart from that also, I'm looking at a lot of private companies to be incentivized, because as the money comes to incubation centers, it becomes a more viable and good market for private agencies to create products for incubation centers. And now we are seeing that the initial starting phase where products are being created for incubation centers to use. Right? And tomorrow's will be more connected and much more mature incubation and acceleration system. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'm a little mindful of the time. So let's move to the second topic, which is how can startups leverage a constant stream of new technologies? Every day something new is happening. So how do you really keep pace with what's changing, and how do you ensure growth and sustainability? So may I request Ronnie Banerjee to give his perspective.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Ronnie and I'm not a techie. But I'm privileged to be a part on several forums wherein every fortnight I come across at least 5 such startups or such innovators who pitch in front of us. We are a mini Shark Tank there. So while you were mentioning $100 billion and coming to the topic which you have said, you will see that today, in today's startup ecosystem, you talk to anybody who is already a startup or wants to be a startup, that why do you want to do it, boss? So it's just like 3 things comes up. एक यूनिकॉर्न बनना है, दूसरा वैल्यू क्रिएट करना है, और तीसरा बोलता है फंड रेज करना है. You ask yourself, exactly these 3 questions come, or these are the 3 things that they say. Now, when you talk about access to technology, why do we want to innovate something which has not been done earlier? If we have to talk about access to technology, it's already there. And especially when we are sitting under this forum, Tech Talent League. So it's all about thinking in a, I would not say right or wrong direction, but an appropriate direction wherein you already have access to that technology, that innovation, that kind of invention that is happening, but they are not reinventing the wheel. The wheel is there. Like, instead of sharing my opinion or deliberate upon from such a platform, because I have been made privileged to hold this mic, I would rather like to throw 3-4 questions as thought triggers, and let's think around that as we go away from this forum, because this would not conclude our kind of deliberations. Say for example, if you have to talk tech, why can't you talk of a tech that can happen around menstrual hygiene? Why can't you talk about a tech which can happen about basic financial literacy? Why can't you talk about a tech? And that tech has to be as easy as scanning an UPI, this thing, QR code. Can we not think around them? Why do we have to think of something which is above the sky? Like, I'm also one of the mentors at IIT Kanpur. So what my colleague Nikhil was also saying in the last panel, that we are all chasing AI, Chat GPT, and of late in the last 1 year, what we have learned from Chat GPT is just one word called delve, which is not there in conclusion, which was not a part of our vocabulary earlier. So why are we chasing for something new? Why can't we talk about that traditional thing which they have done in Tamil Nadu? Why can't we think about those smallest of the small innovations that are happening every day? And there are larger problems to solve beyond becoming a unicorn, beyond raising your value or creating your value or getting your venture capitalist invest because they want to exit when your value is created. So that's my take, sir, going forward.
Yeah. It's a very contra type
Yeah,
of
it is.
perspective.
I beg your pardon, but
Yeah,
it is.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
So let me go to now Mr. Gaurav Mathur to give his views.
Hello. So, I represent a very different, personality in this room. I'm more closer to the corporate. And as a corporate, I know the talent requirements, the tech talent requirements corporates have today. And on the other side, I'm able to hear and see, the vast amount of talent getting created at the universities. And because there are lack of employment opportunities sometimes, we hear a lot of people and a lot of youngsters without getting the experience under the belt, they want to start off a startup. And that's where the ideas goes for a toss. So as an organization, I belong to a company called Filix Consulting. What we did is, we have done a forward and backward integration on this. And for example, we went to a rural area in Bangalore called Neelamangala. And there, students coming out of colleges, they don't want to leave their homes, but they want good packages. And the corporates are not willing to go to Neelamangala. They are willing to be at Bangalore. Right, so I think one of the needs of the hour for access to these students is also the corporates going towards these people rather than these students coming to the corporates. That's not going to happen all the time. Now, with respect to the availability of technology, how startups can utilize it, a lot of the times I've seen startups, they would be good at one thing. So they would have built a product, but they don't know how to market it. They would not have a good sales team to do that for them. But technology today is available to help you do your website very quickly. If you, for example, use the Wix as a platform, it already has AI which can help you build images dynamically, help you create presentations, help you do websites very fast. You've got a Canva. And if you look at the technology partner today, My Anatomy, I was just seeing their slides here. They already have a talent platform which is there. So you don't need to, as a startup, when you're choosing a technology, you have to decide between whether you make it or you buy it, right? So it is suggested that you should buy a technology which is available and then make things around it. You don't need to, you don't need to go and sit and make a financial management application or a manufacturing application. As an organization, Filix has been collaborating with a lot of startups and taking their solutions to the manufacturing sector. So build, you should look at, while adopting it for yourself, you should initially buy what is there. There is a Tally, there is a Canva, there's so many solutions, and then build solutions around it for your own company. And if you're a startup who wants to go to the, the corporates, then also these technologies are very helpful. So I think access to the technology is all there. You probably need to have some guru or some mentor who guides you on, how to control your operating costs. And we are happy to collaborate with a lot of universities here so that we can bridge that gap between the corporate and the academia which is being available here.
I think that's a very valid perspective. But I personally feel that, say, if you're a startup, and things are changing. So just look at the world which was before November of 2022, before ChatGPT hit the scene. There are a lot of companies which were having a business model which was around, writing tools and creativity and all these advertisements and things like that. That world got suddenly upended because of ChatGPT. In fact, many of these startups went out of business because of this. So I feel that either the incubator or at least some agency should be doing something like strategic foresight continuously, looking at where technology is heading and being able to advise these startups and make them aware of how things are shifting, because you are so caught up in the day-to-day of the startup that sometimes you miss, those things which are changing very fast. So perhaps there is a role there which is missing at the moment, which needs to be introduced.
No, you're perfectly right. So that's why I said, do your research, get a guru, get a mentor, right? Maybe you've not seen the world and there are a lot of products already out there, right? So use it and research on it before you really jump into it. And having a mentor is very important. A lot of the startups are very passionate entrepreneurs, but then they should realize that there is somebody out there who can also guide them towards the bigger world.
Thank you. So now let's move to the third topic, and this is the last topic for today, which is looking at business development, legal and globalization perspectives for startups. So let me start first with Abhilasha Malik. Over to you.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for having me here as a part of this esteemed panel. To clarify, I'm not a lawyer, and no, we are not a law firm. I represent the Mayor of London here in India. We are his office, his economic and development agency, and I look after entire Northern India. Now, over the course of the last year and more, I've had the fortune of, working very closely with a lot of incubators, accelerators across the country to really understand that where is this very strong Indian startup story now headed. And we've just heard from everybody that truly today, the Indian startup ecosystem is phenomenal and is only exponentially growing. Now, all of this growth finds great alignment beyond borders. And I can specifically say this for the city that I speak of, and that is London. So London today has in the last 1 year, recorded 100 FDI projects, and 29% of them, which is the highest, have come as inward investment from India. So today we are the top investors into London. And what makes us really, what is it about London that finds favor with a lot of Indian startups? So besides the fundamentals, and when I say fundamentals, I mean regulation, I mean policy, I mean, from the right sort of talent to clients to funding to customers, besides the actual fundamentals, there are the intangibles. And with intangibles here, I refer to the sheer values, the warmth, and the welcome that any Indian company or any Indian startup, irrespective of size, today a startup today will be an MSME tomorrow and later a company. So despite all of that, it is what makes London extremely attractive and a hotbed for Indian companies today, which are actively looking at expanding beyond borders. And that's where we come in. So, like Gaurav said, that there is this mentoring that is needed, this little gap that you find. So you have your idea, you've had your startup, you have everything in place, you've been able to identify your niche depending on the technology sector that you come from. And now comes the second part of it, where you don't know everything that lies beyond borders, or, there's a market, there's an ecosystem, there is a setup that you're not as aware of. And that's where we come in. So we play an extremely pivotal role in hand-holding and in taking you to, through the regulation, helping you navigate the entire ecosystem that awaits you there. And, sort of will make you feel as an extension of this wonderful idea and this, dream that you have. So taking on from there and knitting it all together. But if you speak of global perspectives, you know, where the Indian startup story is going, I think it's going extremely strong. And Mr. Chowdary and I were discussing earlier where he said, you know, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, world is one family. So I look at even technology, even the startups, the entire ecosystem as one close thing coming together globally, you know. So the Indian story holding very strong and London coming very closely and, you know, sort of growing together in that space.
So Abhilasha, just a question to you. After Brexit, now what has happened is that the European, you know, market is not accessible, say, if you locate in London. So how do you deal with that? What is your pitch on that for a startup?
You know, the good thing is I don't need a pitch. Brexit happened a long time ago, and the London story has stood very, very strong. I mean, we've emerged very resilient, and you know, a simple example is last year alone we had about 31 Indian companies set up in London. Speaking specifically of artificial intelligence, not just India, but nearly about, I think, more than 1,500 odd leading AI companies are headquartered in London. So despite, you know, putting Brexit aside, even funding, London alone has twice the amount of funding, UK has twice the amount of funding as compared to any European city. So London opens doors to not just entire Europe, but also emerging markets. So it's one of those places, you know, where you're headquartered to sort of then, it's not just about growing into London, but it's also growing in London and then growing from London. So, you know, as a springboard to the rest of the world, which then lies open for you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mr. Sudan,
yes.
Business doesn't have any borders. For politicians, political borders will be there. For business people, I don't think there is any border. Whether they are in London or India or wherever it is, I mean, they can do the business where, particularly in the internet world. That is the reason why our India Startup Foundation, we transformed that into International Startup Foundation. As she was mentioning, the world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Wherever startups are there, we are there to help them. And they also need India market. India also need their market. So it is a collaborative effort.
True, true.
Yes, but just adding to that, sorry. Yeah. This, you know, I've never looked at trade in all of this time. I've never looked at trade from just one perspective of, you know, a lot of times I'm asked, is it inward or outward? And my response is a very simple one, that all good trade flourishes both ways. And it is set to flourish both ways. So not just that, you know, it's one family and this thing, but you find warmth. The minute a startup, the minute a company, the minute a founder finds two things. First is understanding his thought and idea, and second is where is his journey headed? What is it that he's seeking? The minute you're able to understand that perspective, you're able to bring to him what it is that he's actually looking for. And I think that is something now, whether it is, you know, in India or whether it is in London, and when it is in London and how it is where we come in. So that is the sort of thing I see.
So there is just one perspective to what Mr. Chowdary said. What we are seeing internationally is that cross-border data flows are being restricted. More and more countries are expecting data to be locally resident, especially where it comes to personal data. Now, if you look at the European Union, so the data can flow across countries within that block, whereas outside of that block, then it becomes a problem. So what I feel is that as startups in the future will have to increasingly have to face this problem of restrictions on cross-border data flows, which is going to upset some of the business models which are available out there.
So lawyers like her can make more money out of it.
Right, exactly. So, okay, this was great. Now because this whole conference is about talent and about, you know, how it sort of impacts on the startup system and incubators and accelerators, let me now go to Mr. Piyush Garg and see what is his perspective on all that has been discussed from an academic institution point of view.
Thank you. With that, I would like to add the legal perspective as well, if
you
permit.
Sure.
So everyone was talking that I'm not a lawyer, so
keep it closer.
I'm a lawyer as well.
Excellent.
And with utmost regards to the co-panel members, I would like to interact with their audience. Hello, Delhi. A warm greetings in this cold weather. Till the time we don't talk about AI, someone doesn't seem to be educated enough. And I'm not. So can someone actually help me understand what is the difference between AI and ethical AI? Since morning, we have been actually hearing this term very common. Ethical AI and AI. At times, things seems very complicated, but they are very simple. Okay? What is the legal age to marry in India? 18? 21. And what is the legal age to have a consensual sex? It's 18. Ethics and legal. So we can have a consensual intimacy at the age of 18, but we can marry at the age of 21. So this is the difference between ethical AI and AI.
Interesting. Please go ahead.
Okay. Now, very frequently we talk about the frameworks and the legal safeguards which any government should work on. We all are pioneers in our domain. Can someone help me understand, when we're talking about next gen, in the present generation, which are the legal safeguards which are available to us if any infringement happens or if anything wrong happens in AI? Most probably the answer would be that the government is working on it and the government should protect it, right? Nobody talks about the Information Technology Act 2000. Nobody talks about the DPDA 2023, Digital Privacy and Data Protection Act. Nobody talks about the constitutional safeguards. Can the next generation of incubators and accelerators move to the next level without having the strong founding blocks, without having the strong fundamentals? What it will take? Whenever we talk about startups, ek AI hua, next, if we don't talk about the unicorns, we don't actually have the vision. I strongly believe that the next generation of disruption will actually come only with 4 C's: collaboration, cross-culture, cross-domain, and cross-skilling. As one of our renowned speakers in her previous session said, culture eats breakfast for the strategy. Eats strategy for the breakfast. What works in the south does not work in the north. When I say collaboration, how can I actually replicate Mr. J. Chowdary and Mr. Srinivas and other panel members across to India, to my startups who are in tier 3 cities? And I'm saying this when I'm actually the vice president of a university having 2,900 patents granted to me. And where is this university? In tier 3 city. Second largest in the world. 247 private registered startups with us. 247. Most of my co-panel members said, we need more infusion of funds. I would say most of these 247 startups who are incubated with me, part of my student community, they are making the marks without even having the 5 lakhs of basic investments with them. And 6 of them this week are going to represent in the grand finale at IIT Mumbai. And all of them are working on the social impact. Assistive technologies for the deaf and mute, rural empowerment, employment generation. So instead of actually seeking the ROI, that is the return on investment, the next generation of startups and incubators should focus on self-sustainability, should focus on self-empowerment, and ROI, which is defined as return on impact. The impact which I have done on the society as an entrepreneur, as a founding director. So that is where I see that this collaboration, cross-domain skilling, cross-domain technologies, and cross-cultural collaboration will be the founding pillars of the next generation startups and incubators.
Thank you very much. Excellent. May I just also give an opportunity to the audience if they have any questions, just 5 minutes. We'll take maybe 2 or 3 questions if there are any questions. Or any comments or any observations, because, we have very distinguished people here. So anybody who would like to ask a question, make a comment, the floor is open to you. You can just raise your hand and we'll deliver the mic to you. Okay. May I have a mic? May I borrow it? Yeah, sure. Yes. If you can just tell your name and then...
Yeah, my name is Commander Pratap Pawar. I represent a software company. My question to the friends from academia is, many of the youngsters today, they assume that, a startup, we hear about chai walas and bhel walas. So what is this misconception about having a startup which delivers tea, right? It's not a disruption. But many of the startups that we hear are into things like this. So how are the students looking at it? One is the environment that is created by Chowdary sir and others, and the student community which comes to you. What is their opinion about it?
I think it would be a misrepresentation of the larger community of the startups when we say that some of them are in the hospitality sector, though hospitality is one of the biggest sectors in our country. Majority of my startups are deep tech startups. They are leveraging AI, data analytics, machine learning. When it comes to F&B sector, they work on minimizing the wastage. They are minimizing the type of consumption patterns which we are taking from diversified sources, increasing the revenues, understanding the demographics and dynamics that how they can serve larger customer with minimum set of meals. So if we are putting the data analytics and machine learning to the existing F&B sector, that's the disruption, right? Second, same point of time, when you said chai wala, right? This is in reference to one of the startups which actually is having an annual revenue of 6.8 crores, employing 67 people under him. And in the COVID, that was one of the startups which did not stop any payment for any employee, took the loan, made the payments to everyone. Now, they are actually having a franchisee, 29 franchisees across the country, exporting the tea, which is sourced from the Assam, and exporting it globally and even to London as well, at a very, very high premium. So this is the turnaround which we are doing, using the emerging technologies in the sectors which are very, very common to all of us. Now, when I gave a quick reference about the deaf and mute, we went to Shark Tank Season 3 finale. We did not take even a single rupee in that. Second-year student of mine working for the deaf and mute. We already have the term sheets. We have the collaboration opportunities to the tune of all the branches of one of the largest FI in our country. That's the kind of disruption which we are having.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes, please. If you can just pass the mic.
My apologies for not asking a question, but since you have thrown the floor open to comments,
Sure.
I think this event and other events like it, in this year and the next, are actually happening on the cusp of something very important. When starting up in AI and developing either foundation models or LLM models is now, it's a done deal almost. So I think the next generation of startups really will be using AI as a tool in their toolkit more than, trying to develop new things within AI. There will of course be a very small, like Oracle and other database companies specialize in developing the database technology. There will always continue to be AI companies which will specialize in that. But what used to be the domain of analysis, which used to be either stochastic modeling or whether it used to be probabilistic analysis or whether it used to be, standard deviations. Now we will see people using more than Excel, right? AI tools. So I think we should start to figure out how to empower our startups, especially as incubators and accelerators, with the tools to be able to integrate AI. Retail has done that quite successfully, actually. If you look at, if anybody of you shops on any of the online shopping portals, Ajio, Myntra, whatever it is, there are companies, I think there are at least a dozen companies in Bangalore, which are enabling them with AI, right? Now, the same level of competitive advantage that artificial intelligence gives, whether it is, in going further with the technology and the idea, whether it is identifying the markets and, or even, where to incubate. The question that I was getting in my mind when we were speaking about London was, what is the difference between being incubated in Dubai, between being based in Dubai and using that as a springboard versus London, in terms of, so AI will become a huge factor, and I think we should all be looking for those tools that will be a necessary, it will be another blade in our Swiss Army knife for the startup.
Very valid. Maybe Mr. Sudan, you can talk about University of Florida, what they are doing for their...
Yeah. So there is this case of University of Florida, and they realized that AI is becoming so important that they have now integrated AI or introduced AI into every single course. So much so that they have recruited 116 new faculty who are specialized on AI and embedded them in different departments so that it's a completely AI-oriented method of teaching. So you already see these signals, in terms of universities taking action and very aggressive action in this area. And I think Indian universities also need to catch up on that. Perhaps there is still a gap which needs to be bridged.
Sir, with due respect, I would like to add something to that, so that next time, instead of actually quoting University of Florida, you can take an example of Indian University.
Sure.
This 26th January, we are launching entrepreneurship development program, which will be starting from 6th semester onwards with industry academia engagement totally dedicated for the startups. So if the student is in 6th semester, it will be linked to the credit program, and the student will be doing full-time entrepreneurship starting from 6th semester. Okay? They will be interacting with all the industry leaders, working on the emerging technologies so that they can work on their own startups, and they will be awarded the credits for that particular thing. They don't have to attend any other academic sessions. And when they move to the 7th and 8th semester, their yardstick of success would be how they are actually acquiring the customers and building the revenue for themselves. Along with that, we'll be providing them the entire support in terms of patent filing, where university will bear the entire cost, and still 90% of the rights would be with them. And we will also provide them the entire compliance and legal support as well.
Fantastic. Excellent. So I think that's a very optimistic note on which to end this particular session. So I would like to thank the panelists and of course the audience for a great session, and look forward to a very bright future for the next generation of startups, incubators and accelerators. Thank you.